Please note the meeting is being audio recorded. My name is John Holman, Chair of the Commission, and I will be running tonight's meeting. We are your volunteer representatives appointed by our county council person or county executive and entrusted to monitor renovations and additions to our Baltimore County historic resources. We review and approve nominations to the Baltimore County Preliminary Landmarks List and comment on National Register nominations. Additionally, we are charged with evaluating submissions to the Baltimore County Historic Tax Credit Program that encourages the appropriate maintenance and renovation of designated historic properties. Would the commissioners please introduce themselves by name and county council district or representation? We can go in the order listed on the PowerPoint screen. Is Lily with us? Lily, so Chris Weston.
Chris Weston, District 2.
Wendy McIver, District 3.
Daniel Dean, District 5.
Not Ray. Phoebe.
Phoebe Evans Latosha, executive appointment.
Amy Ferguson, executive appointment.
Scott Holotka, Planning Board Representative.
Ed Horde, executive appointment.
Did Chris Parks join us yet? No. And John Holman, of course. Now, please stand and we will say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag.
Of the United States of America.
and to the
To the
republic
republic
which
for which it
stands one nation under God, with liberty and justice for all.
Liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The Landmarks Preservation Commission operates under the authority, standards, and requirements of Title VII, Article 32 of the Baltimore County Code. We refer to the United States Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation as administered by the National Park Service. This is the accepted national standard for historic preservation projects. Our own Baltimore County Historic Preservation Design Guidelines directly reference and incorporate the Secretary of the Interior's standards for rehabilitation. We have important preservation issues to discuss and debate at each meeting. If you would like to make comments, please limit your comments to the specific application or proposal submission being reviewed. We ask for your assistance and understanding so that the discussions do not digress. As an additional comment, we can all agree that historic preservation is an important aspect of the quality of life and place that makes Baltimore County unique. As a commission, we seek to recommend significant buildings and places for landmark consideration to the County Council for their final vote. As commissioners, we serve on the commission due to our expertise, interest, and passion for historic buildings and places, and review submissions based solely on their merit. While we may disagree in discussion and voting, we continue to be a collegial body that respects each other personally and professionally. Staff reminders for virtual meetings.
Sure, just a staff reminder and offering testimony. Members of the public had the opportunity to submit written testimony prior to the meeting and to register to speak for a certain agenda item prior to the meeting. At the time of the agenda item which you register to speak, staff will announce your name and unmute you. You'll have 3 minutes. Please keep your time within that. Owners and applicants and project representatives are not limited to 3 minutes. They are able to address the commission and answer any questions or add anything. And just a reminder that the information presented in this presentation is just a summary to keep the meeting moving in an organized manner. All the commission members receive all the items of the application that were submitted 1 week prior to the meeting in order to prepare. So again, everything in this is just a summary to keep the meeting moving.
Thank you. And then we have a special presentation that we will start with, right, Caitlin?
Yes. Give me a second. All right, so we have a special presentation this evening. This comes once in a while before our commission. So I'm just going to start off by giving a little bit of context for those members of the public who are with us who aren't maybe not familiar with the National Register of Historic Places. The National Register is the official list of the nation's historic places worthy of preservation. It's authorized and created by the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966. It is a program within the National Park Service, which is in the Department of the Interior. It's a national program to coordinate and support public and private efforts to identify, evaluate, and protect America's historic and archaeological resources. So National Register listing is largely honorary. It does not put any restrictions on the property owner at the local level, unless there happens to be also a corresponding local historic designation on the property, which there are lots of National Register listings in Baltimore County that also have a local county landmark designation or a local historic designation. So in Maryland, the National Register nomination process begins with a submission of a nomination to the Maryland Historical Trust, or MHT, as the State Historic Preservation Office. So when MHT determines that the nomination materials meet the National Register documentation standards, MHT loops in the certified local government where the property is located. So certified local governments play an important part in the process of nominating properties to the National Register through a special working relationship with MHT and the National Park Service. So under this program, both the Local Historic Preservation Commission, which is our Baltimore County Landmarks Preservation Commission, and then the jurisdiction's chief elected official, which is our county executive, are asked to provide recommendations concerning eligibility to the National Register. So the commission and county executive will make a recommendation to MHT for or against the nomination for listing on the National Register based on whether the nomination meets the National Register criteria for eligibility after a public hearing. So if the commission and county executive are in support of the nomination, it moves on to the governor's consulting committee. So then they work with the state preservation officer. And then if everyone involved in the review is in support of the nomination, it is then forwarded to the National Register office of the National Park Service for the final action and inclusion on the list. To be considered eligible, property must meet one or more of the National Register criteria for evaluation. This involves examining the property's age, significance, and integrity. So for age, we need to ask or find out, if the property is considered historic, and the general benchmark for that is at least 50 years old. So that would be anything older or anything constructed before 1974. And then for integrity, we want to see, does it still look much like the way it did when it did in the past? And then significance, we need to ask ourselves, like, is this property associated with any events, activities, developments, or developments that were important in the past, or with the lives of people who were important in the past? Is there any significant architectural history or landscape history or engineering achievements? And does it have the potential to yield any information through archaeological investigations about our past? So the nomination that we are reviewing today is for the Scylla residence. It was submitted under criterions A and C. So for criterion A, it's associated with events that have made a significant contribution to the broad pattern of our history. So this has a focus on the area of social history as the work of women architects in Maryland under the historic context for women architects in Maryland during the post-war era of 1945 to 1970. So this is an example of work by the Turkish architect Nezahat Arikoglu in conjunction with her husband and design partner İlhan. Arikoglu is a highlight of Maryland's collection of modern buildings due to its unique blend of contemporary Turkish and American design features. It also helped women to establish a more equitable environment within the architectural profession and their stories from the past of the broader social history of women's efforts to achieve greater equality within American society. And then under criterion C for architecture, as a distinctive example of a well-designed mid-century modern dwelling, indicative of the trends that shaped modern residential design after World War II, sorry. So the Scylla residence is situated on an irregularly shaped property on the cul-de-sac of Indian Head Road, which is within the Ruxton Hills neighborhood of Towson. The boundaries for the nomination consist of the original, or the entire boundary, property boundary, which is the original property that was owned by Dr. Basri Scylla and Dr. Uligan Scylla, on which the Scylla residence was completed in 1970. Dr. Basri Scylla was a pediatric psychiatrist, and Dr. Uligan Scylla a pediatric allergist, who were classmates at the University of Istanbul School of Medicine in Turkey. Eventually, their careers and education brought them to Maryland in 1964, where they both established practices. The Scyllas lived together at 1801 Indian Head Road from 1970 until Basri passing in 2018. Uligan Scylla kept the property until August of 2021 before selling it to the current owners. So the Scyllas were introduced to the larger Ruxton neighborhood by a colleague before settling on the development of Ruxton Hills. They were drawn to one particular house on the street, the same one that you see on your screen here. They eventually met the couple that lived there, and they were delighted to not only discover that the couple designed it, but also discovered that they were also from Turkey. So obviously they became quick friends, and when the lot at 1801 was available in 1968, the Scyllas purchased it, and their new architect friends and soon-to-be neighbors agreed to design their future home. They worked together on design plans for a year before the house was built. Nezahat Arikoglu was a Turkish architect who practiced in Maryland with her husband, İlhan Arikoglu, a civil engineer, from 1960 to 1970 before returning to Turkey. Nezahat was born in Istanbul in 1920, and she studied at the Academy of Fine Arts, receiving her master's degree in architecture in 1943. She was one of only a handful of women in her graduating class. Nezahat's professional career as an architect practicing in Maryland after World War II provides an excellent example of how women architects persevered during the post-war period to create career advancement opportunities for themselves and others, working towards greater gender equality. She is credited with over 30 mid-century modern projects in the region, many of which were designed within the in-house architecture division of the company Whiting Turner. She elevated the modern work emerging in the area at the time through her formal training in Turkey and notions of contemporary design influenced by the culture she grew up in. From 1950 to 1960, Nezahat and İlhan designed a series of residence and apartment buildings as part of their practice in Turkey. For these designs, the pair subscribed to the international style, implementing Turkish design principles involving a reverence for proportion and light and opening the rear elevation to light and nature. And eventually, they immigrated to the United States. In 1960, the husband-wife team became the chief architectural designers for the Whiting Turner Construction Company of Baltimore. And between 1960 and 1968, they designed a range of modernist buildings for the company's corporate industrial clients. And one of the designs people are probably more familiar with is the WJZ-TV office building. In 1968, they started their own practice, INN Arikoglu, which was operated out of their home studio in Ruxton Hills. The couple operated their joint practice until 1971, taking on mostly residential projects at this time. These projects included the Shipley Residence, which was built in 1968, and the Silla Residence, which was constructed in 1970. Both are in Rexton. And in 1971, the couple returned to Turkey to care for İlhan's father and resume their practice in Istanbul. The residential work of Nazahat demonstrates a fine sense of proportion, the division of public and private spaces within the residence, as well as a awareness of climate and light. The 3 residences that Nazahat and İlhan designed while practicing in Baltimore were characterized by elements of both mid-century modern and contemporary Turkish design, including extensive glazing on the rear elevation, providing connections between the interior and exterior, rectilinear proportioning, and projecting elements like overhangs and cantilevers. Their designs were incredibly site-specific, designing fenestration patterns to frame views of the natural elements present on the site and allowing the topography of the site to influence the type of the structural system and overall form it employed. Nazahat designed an L-shaped main block to overlook the forested landscape with projecting one-story rectangular wing containing the garage on the east. These elements were made popular in the post-war period by architects such as Richard Neutra, Le Corbusier, Walter Gropius, Alvar Aalto, and Marcel Bruyère, and their explorations of materials such as steel, concrete, and newly available insulated glass. Frank Lloyd Wright was the largest influence of the period in his site-specific designs and material choices and reinterpreting the modern residential form. So characteristics of his quintessential Usonian houses can be seen in Nazahat's residential work, specifically here in the design of the Silla residence. Usonian houses were often L-shaped to fit around the garden terrace or other outdoor feature. Window walls established a strong visual connection between the interior and exterior spaces. And then the L-shaped plan would be oriented so that the uncovered terrace or patio would sit at the rear of the dwelling. Nazahat would have replicated this organization because it aligns with a lot of Turkish design principles, especially with the opening of the rear elevation to light and nature. Usonians also exhibited natural local materials, often wood, multi-height overlapping roof planes, cantilevered overhangs, and natural lighting with clerestory windows. For the interior, the dining room, kitchen, and den were designed to flow together, and then there was a more for the interior, living room, dining room, kitchen, and den were designed to flow together, and bedrooms were kept in a more private wing. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped a whole page. I was wondering why I was getting off track. Pardon me. All right, so the house was constructed of concrete block and wood frame, and is clad in a light buff iron spot brick veneer with a running bond pattern with some sections in the rear projection that was clad in T111 plywood siding to highlight the modernist massing. And proportions in design. So again, mid-century modern housing design is characterized by clean lines, open floor plans, floor-to-ceiling windows that interplay between indoors and outdoors with built-ins and functionality. Again, for interior spaces, the living room, dining room, kitchen, and den were designed to flow together, whereas the bedrooms were off to the side in a more private wing. So the Scylla residence retains an exceptionally high degree of integrity across all categories, allowing the house to convey its historical and architectural significance. The house is still in its original location, and its fortisted setting overlooking Lake Roland remains relatively unchanged. Its integrity of design, materials, and workmanship are particularly strong. The house retains its original form and all of its original exterior design elements, including the exterior vertical plywood siding and brick veneer that enhance the spatial organization with no major alterations or additions. The original windows have largely been retained, although some have been replaced to match the original materials and configuration. While some modifications have been made to the interior, it exists remarkably in a state of preservation and exhibits all of its primary materials and finishes, including slate and pegged hardwood flooring, beadboard ceilings, natural wood paneling, and the original, even the original kitchen cabinets. The interior layout is mostly intact with only a few minor changes. Collectively, these aspects of integrity allow the house to convey a feeling and sense of time and place of a very well-designed, mid-century modern custom home, and the association and relatively intact physical features convey that the Scylla residence's historic character and provide a direct link to the historic context of a post-war architect in Maryland. And with that, here again are the two criteria that the property is being nominated under. Staff feels that the nomination provides sufficient justifications under both of them to make the property eligible for listing. So here I ask the commission now to discuss the nomination and have a vote on whether or not to recommend the property for listing on the National Register. Thank you.
So Caitlin, just to be clear, we are going to recommend this for National Register. And do we also nominate it for landmark preservation at the same time? And that does not happen.
This is not a landmark nomination. This is only National Register.
Good, just for
Yes, and we're doing this as part of our requirements as being a certified local government.
Good. And also remind us of the owner's involvement in the nomination.
The owners have consented to the nomination. This project was the result of grant money, I believe, by the Baltimore Architecture Foundation received a MHT non-capital grant for this historic context to do a multi-property nomination on women architects in Maryland post-World War II. So from 1946 to 1970. So it's part of a grant project.
Okay, thank you, Caitlin. So commissioners, we have the background on the house, why it was nominated. You can see on your screen, the owners are consent to it and are enthusiastic about it. I take it by their consent. So comments, discussion?
I guess just this is Chris Bart's one question, and that's do we have to select one criteria or can it be nominated on both?
Well, no, you're just voting on what is presented in the nomination nomination form. If you agree with it.
Okay, great. Then I have no questions. I think both seem appropriate.
I think I agree. I think this looks like a fine building. It's nice to see some mid-century modern houses joining the National Register. More of them.
I believe this might be the first building from 1970 that's been surveyed or at least on the National Register in Baltimore County, or being considered in Baltimore County.
In Baltimore County,
Yeah,
yes.
in Baltimore County, yes.
Very nice.
It's also wonderful to see that it's retained so much integrity. I grew up in a 1970s mid-century modern house, and I recognize some of the common themes, the spiral staircase in particular, and the combination of bringing the light to bring in nature into the space, and so I strongly favor that. So, what would a motion be for this? That
Just to approve the
approve-
nomination as
okay.
presented.
To say, but a motion to recommend. So
Okay,
this is a
so-
recommendation. So
I would move that I make a motion that we recommend nomination to the National Registry of Historic Places
I'll second.
on the criteria A and C.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further discussion out of a full motion? Hearing none, may we do a roll call vote, Jessica?
Sure, could we have Chris Weston, please?
Yes.
Chris Parks,
Yes.
Phoebe,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
Jamie,
yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
and John, please.
Yes, and thank you to both Caitlin and Jessica for doing such a great job on putting this together. Really appreciate it. Next thing, consideration of any changes to today's agenda. Anything we need to know about there?
No
No.
changes.
No changes. Minutes of the July 11th meeting. Everybody's had a chance to read those. Any revisions or corrections? Hearing none, could I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Second, and then just a voice vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes. And then we have some consent agenda items, 4, 7, 8, and 9. Do you want to do a quick summary of those, Jessica? And then we'll see if everybody's okay with that.
Sure. First, we have the Mondi property at 1554 South Rolling Road in Relay, County Council District 1. This is a contributing resource within the Relay County Historic District, and the applicant is seeking Part 2 approval to return the transom above the front entrance. Next, we have the Hawing property at 2316 Bowerschmidt Road in Essex, County Council District number 7. This is final landmark number 110, Planner's Paradise / Bowerhurst and Setting, and the applicants are seeking Part 2 approval for in-kind replacements to the porch gutters, porch roof, screen doors, porch railing, and the replacement of the AC unit. Next, we have agenda item number 8, the Beverly property at 1602 Corbett Village Lane, County Council District number 3. This is a contributing resource within the Corbett County Historic District, and the applicants are seeking Part 2 approval for an in-kind architectural asphalt shingle roof replacement. And then finally, we have agenda item number 9, the Davenport House or the Mitchell property at 2101 Mount Carmel Road in Parkton, County Council District number 3. This is final landmark number 376. The Davenport House or Bellevue Farm, Bank Barn, Barn, Wagon House, Garden House, and Setting are included in the designation. And the applicants request Part 2 approval for repairs and in-kind replacements to the historic corn crib or wagon house.
Good, thank you, Jessica. Commissioners, is all those being on part of the consent agenda? Hearing no objections, may we have a motion to approve the consent agenda items?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Chris. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tom. Second. And a roll call vote, Jessica?
We have Chris Weston, please.
Yes.
Chris Parts,
Yes.
Phoebe,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
and John, please.
Yes, yes, thank you. And then we will start with number 5. And will we have anybody speaking on behalf on that particular one, on the Malgren property?
We do have the property owner with us tonight, so I can unmute Mr. Malgram if we have any questions.
Good, once we get to that point. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Malgren, for being with us.
Yeah, so the Malgren property is located at 708 Cliveden Road, West in Sudbrook Park, County Council District Number 2. It's a contributing resource within the Sudbrook Park County Historic District, and the applicant is seeking removal of the existing rear walkways, patio, and entry steps, and the construction of a new deck, landing, and patio. So some property background. The home is a 2.5-story frame dwelling with a cross gambrel roof constructed in 1895 in the shingle style. The applicant is requesting to make several improvements to the rear entry and patio area. The rear steps, walkways, and patio area are not original or historic features to the home. So the location where the work is off the rear of the main house and the rear L addition. There are 2 exterior entries accessible by concrete and flagstone steps that were constructed over the previous wood steps in 2003. They were improperly installed by pouring concrete over the existing steps, then adding flagstones. Subsequently, the wood steps are rotting beneath the existing concrete, causing the step foundation to collapse. The steps lead to the existing flagstone walkways, and miniature patio are actively sinking into the ground, creating a tripping hazard. So the applicants propose to remove the existing steps, patio area, and walkways, and to level and prep the surrounding ground. To construct a new L-shaped 204 square foot deck to create a landing between the 2 rear entry doors. The deck landing will be with 6x6 extreme treated wood with concrete footing that extends from the house 10 feet on the right side and 6 feet on the left. New wood steps will be constructed along the entire width and will lead down from the landing to the new proposed patio. A new 16 by 17 foot paver patio will be installed at the base of the new deck and stairs, and Belger pavers in the color light brown mix will be laid. A new walkway will also be laid in the same locations using the same Belger pavers. And the guidelines that were referenced are under Chapter 7, Fences and Landscapes, guidelines for decks, and those are available on the screen. So staff's recommendation is for the LPC to approve the request as proposed and vote to issue a certificate of appropriateness citing Baltimore County Historic Design Guidelines, Chapter 5, Porches and Steps, County Code Section 32-7-405.
Thank you, Jessica. So, commissioners, thoughts, questions for Mr. Malgren, who's on the line with us?
Yeah, Mr. Malgren, I've unmuted you if you have anything you'd like to say to the commission.
Thank you. I think you covered it perfectly in the explanation. The current walkways and steps are collapsing, and I'd like to replace them with a more usable area.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions or thoughts that we need to expand on? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve. Can we go back to the screen where we have the text?
A little farther down, I think he wants. So if you can go to the next.
Which
Yeah, I was going to cite the passages of our manual to make the motion, but if it's
you can on the bottom of the screen, right? It has the
Oh,
citing, yeah, in a
yeah. Let me
in a
put my
shorthand
glasses on.
shorthand version
I'd like
of
to-
it. Sorry.
I'd like to make a motion to approve citing Baltimore County Historic Design Guidelines, Chapter 7, Fences and Landscaping, County Code Section 32-7-405.
Thank you, Chris. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Daniel. And then, hearing no more discussion, may we have a roll call vote, Jessica?
Sure. Could I have Chris Weston, please?
Yes.
Chris Parts? Sorry, Chris Parts, are you still with us?
I think he's went off to his next meeting. We just have to make sure we still have a quorum.
Gotcha.
I think he's gone.
Yeah, we're good. We still have a quorum.
Yes, yeah, we have
Sorry.
9 commissioners. Okay, great. Can we have Phoebe, please?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Wendy?
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
And John, please.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Right, next we have agenda item number 6, the Smith property at 502 Upland Road, Sudbrook Park, County Council District number 2. This is a non-contributing resource within the Sudbrook Park County Historic District, and the applicants are seeking the installation of a street front parking pad. The property at 502 Upland Road is a split-level shed-style dwelling constructed in 1947 and is a non-contributing structure. On August 5th, 2024, Preservation Services staff was informed of active grading along the roadway at 502 Upland Road with the presumed intent to install a new parking pad. Staff contacted the property owner with instructions to submit a historic review application for the proposed work. A code violation has not been issued. The property owner wishes to install a new 6 by 24 foot asphalt parking pad along the front of the property on Upland Road. The proposed parking pad does not connect to the existing driveway and will widen the street to allow for more room for street parking. The applicant has proposed crushed gravel or natural stone as alternative options. The application noted that the front yard slopes approximately 90 degrees toward Upland Road, where stormwater collects and makes parking difficult. The work will include continued grading at roughly 5 to 10 degrees along the sloped front yard. Staff notes that most of the streets in the district are narrow, only allowing for parking on one side of the street, and is difficult. There are parking pads present in the district where it seems that no formal driveway exists, but they are in the minority. In addition, there are a few expanded driveways. A mix of concrete, gravel, and asphalt are present throughout. Upland Road is the southern boundary of the original Sudbrook Park District. South of the intersection of Cliveden and Upland Road is the Sudbrook Park Historic District Expansion Number 1. There are no other parking pads along the front yards along the 500 block of Upland. The application does not include any information about if there will be a low retaining wall or border along the property side. Staff asked the Commission to clarify any additional details about the design of the parking area that are lacking from the site plan. While staff doesn't necessarily have an issue with creating more functional parking, staff does feel that it would be more appropriate and aesthetically pleasing to have the new parking area connect to the existing driveway or expanding existing driveway. Widening the current driveway will help preserve the streetscape and make the additional parking cohesive with what exists on the site. The current proposal has the potential to disrupt the Olmsted plan of curvilinear tree-lined streets, which makes Sudbrook Park significant for its landscape design. Our design guidelines state that new parking areas may be appropriate if the design is in keeping with existing circulation routes and the design complements the primary structure and/or historic district. Staff asked that the Commission to discuss the location of the proposed parking area and its potential impact to the streetscape, and to discuss any alternatives. And as a note, since Upland Road is a county-maintained roadway, staff has inquired at DTW if any additional approvals would be needed to create a new curb cut. And as of September 4th, we are still waiting on an update for that information.
And still waiting. I haven't got back to me.
is, so staff recommends that the LPC determine if the placement and design of the proposed parking area is appropriate for the district and if it meets our design guidelines, and then to approve, modify, or deny accordingly, citing Baltimore County Historic Design Guidelines, Chapter 7, Fences and Landscapes, County Code Section 32-7-405. And we do have the property owner online with us tonight. Ms. Smith, I can unmute you if there's anything you'd like to say to the commission. Ms. Smith, you're unmuted if you would like to say anything.
Yeah, no, thank you. And thank you for seeing this project and giving us your input. One of the issues that we have had is we have my daughter who lives there who is disabled. And so we have people who come in round the clock to help her manage her life and, their aides and things like that. So parking on the street is crucial to just the coming and going of our staff, and it becomes extremely muddy just because of the grading, which is why we wanted to do something to make it just more workable for our workers so they're not stepping out into a big muddy puddle. And while we would love to extend the driveway, and we live on Olmsted Road, which is right around the corner, and that's what we did with our driveway. We're not in the historic district, but we extended our driveway so we could park 2 cars side by side, and it worked out. The problem is, and there's no picture here, but, oh yeah, there is. The way that the water is graded down from the house, we just can't extend the driveway to the left without a huge undertaking financially to reroute the stormwater that comes from the house, because that would be our preference actually, is to widen the driveway. But it would just cost so much more to do that. And we already have undue costs because of past things that have come up when we bought the house that we were unaware of, like the new windows in the front that came in front of you a couple months ago. And, some of the other things that we have incurred. So I am open to asphalt if rocks would be better. Like, I'm open to suggestions to make it look aesthetically pleasing, because that's why we moved to Sedgwick Park, is the exact reasons that you said, the curvy roads and the tree lines and all of that. So I'm open to your input.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. We appreciate your comments. Commissioners, any questions or thoughts?
I have a question. I don't understand why you couldn't expand to the left of the car parked in the driveway and make a little wider parking pad there.
And I wish I could answer that better, and I wish my husband was here, but he's working. So my understanding, and I'm not going to explain this right, is the way that so when the water comes off of the house, it comes down through, like, on the side of the driveway, and there's concrete there and the gas lines, or there's things there that make it really, really difficult.
This is not a terribly steep site. I mean, this is a virtually level site. I mean, you may have to do a little regrading when you do it, but you should be able to do it. I see no problem with it from here, unless there are things I don't know about that.
You're right. Well, we have consulted the asphalt company that we talked to that could also do stone, said that this would be a much better option. And I wish I could speak to it better. I am really sorry that I can't, but that would have been our first preference. But cost-wise, we just couldn't afford it. It would mean like rerouting gas lines or water lines or whatever it was. And that just, the people across the street park their car on the grass, which is what we've been doing so far. And I think that looks awful. Like, we're offering a nice way of having the cars off of the road.
So what I think I heard you say is that there are utilities and you cannot pave over the existing utilities.
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I also heard in the testimony that there were other examples of this apron in the neighborhood.
I believe so,
Not
yeah.
on this,
Yeah,
but
not on the street, not on these 5 houses that are all similar, but definitely other houses in the neighborhood have, whether it's stone pavers or asphalt or stones, there are different options to make more of a parking pad so that people can come and go.
I think
Again,
there are
like our
two
house
things
on,
that,
I'm sorry,
oh, go ahead.
our house on Olmsted, that's exactly what we did was we widened our driveway because we could.
I think I would feel better about it if I saw other examples in the neighborhood, and also that if I knew that your neighbors were in support of what you're proposing.
Well, I know our next door neighbor is not in support of it.
I think in terms of keeping the street like a nice homestead design, you know, relatively narrow road is a smart thing. And I think if everyone starts putting in parking pads, and it's going to change the character of this beautiful tree-lined street. I think it's.
And our street, it's a non-contributing part of the neighborhood. We don't even get a tax break for doing any of the work that we've already done, which seems kind of ridiculous since we have to do it, honestly.
Yeah, we did have a technical committee that looked into that, and you know, one of the conclusions that we had was that Sudbrook Park may want to consider expanding the historic district to include your houses, and so if that were to happen, then or re-review the period of eligibility, and if that were to occur, then your house would be eligible for the tax credits.
Yeah, that doesn't help us now, though.
No, it doesn't help you now, and I'm
Site
sympathetic
work
in
is.
terms of, you know, issues related to you know, drainage and parking. You know, I live in a historic district as well, and you know, that is an issue and concern. But it would be preferable to expand the driveway, and I don't know that we have enough information in terms of the conditions there. Also, in terms of what you're proposing for the parking pad, there were some unanswered questions related to grading and retaining walls, and just what it's going to look like. I'm not really seeing much in the way of details on the you
Well,
know.
I think that's the question. We were hoping for your guidance. In other words, we like whether, I mean, can we put stones in there? Can we add, you know, just nice stones to expand it out?
So Ms. Smith, the guidance that we wish to give you, is, if I'm hearing the commissioners correctly, is that we probably need more information on the proposal. One thing that's hanging out there, of course, is zoning, whether you could even do what you intend to do. We don't know if that's going to require zoning. And I'm assuming there are other options to expanding the driveway a little bit in terms of how you do it and what you put over that. But my sense of it from the commissioners is we need some more information before we can make a decision for you on that. Commissioners, if that is the sense of it, then we would, at this point, we would deny their request to build the parking pad and invite them to come back to our October meeting with some more information.
So
Maybe
can someone
perhaps
give me
provide them-
guidelines?
Yes, can you perhaps give them some parameters on what you would like
Yeah,
to?
I would be interested in a more detailed site plan that clarifies, you know, where the utilities are, that would justify putting the parking pad on this location right on Upland rather than expanding the driveway. And more detail about the transition from the grass to the parking pad. You know, the example, would it include a retaining wall? What's the aesthetics of that transition from yard to parking pad to street? This is just a little stick drawing where it's a block.
Okay.
This is not an alt scale, so it's,
You would need that drawing anyway for the county to get this approved. So we're not asking you to spend money on, you know, a drafted drawing that you won't need anyway.
I think you
Okay.
may find that it's less expensive to expand that once you get into DPW and modifying roads, and this will be seen as an expansion of the road and a curb cut. I think you're going to find that's a lot easier to do work with the driveway. And I can't imagine that if there is a gas line running along there, that it's above the level of the road. And if it's below the level of the road, you should be able to expand the driveway over.
So I have a, I'm sorry.
In just looking on the sort of the Google Earth view, I can't quite tell though if there is a sewer clean out right next to the driveway. So I don't know how that would impact anything. You don't see it on you don't see it on this view, but I pulled it up on my own, and there seems to be something just behind the mailbox.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I'm not giving you all the information that would probably be helpful. But a question I do have is it if we did put just gravel down or pavers down, is that allowable? Because it's not changing anything. It's just kind of changing from grass to gravel. Can we do that?
Well, you've got to regrade it. I think we don't control what DPW says. That's a different thing. We're
DPW.
Department of Public Works.
Okay.
Manages the streets and roads and utilities in the county. And I do see it looks like there is a clean out there. So that might present a problem, or maybe it's a widening in front of the house a bit. I mean, there may be some other alternatives that make it a lot easier.
Yeah.
I think that clean out's probably what, Scott, I think you hit the nail on the head there. But I do think there might be another way to do it. You might be able to come in and park parallel to the road in from the driveway.
Right.
And pull in a bit. I mean, there are other alternatives. There's not only widening. You might widen it by making a parking pad that was basically in the front yard, which is what you're doing now, and it would maintain a bit more of the integrity of the street and the neighborhood. And I've got a feeling when you go to DPW, you're going to look on that very kindly.
Can you kind of say I missed a little bit of what you said and I apologize. Can you say that again?
So he was saying that there may be other opportunities for you to create the parking by doing a parking pad in front of the house where you didn't have to widen the driveway for its whole length.
Right.
And that would create another spot close to the house and dry. And that's something to explore with your contractor. And also the other point was that you're going to need to do detailed drawings if you expect to create a parking pad along the road for DPW. The suggestion is that by spending a little more time thinking about and exploring some other options, you may ultimately save some money and save yourself some future maintenance costs. So that's really what we're suggesting to you. Take your time with it. Let's look it over again, and with a better plan, and come back to us in October. But we'll need a motion from someone to that extent.
I was just going to add something if possible.
I can't hear you, Daniel.
Can you hear me now?
Barely.
I just had something to add. I think one of the issues is it's putting in something more permanent where there's nothing else along that street that seems, in that same, you're putting in something permanent. From what I understand, it seems more of a convenience issue for workers you mentioned the neighbor across the street, they park on the grass. Although you may find it, unattractive as far as that goes, that's still a temporary thing where the grass is still growing again and everything else. Whereas this, you're creating something that's more permanent that takes away from that aesthetic road appeal, for the historic aspect of it. So just something to keep in mind. If you want to do that, that's kind of one of the things that we'll look at versus the expanding and kind of making that parking pad, whether it be a rectangle extension off of what you currently have. You're now changing something and putting something more permanent.
Yeah, nope, I understand that. And just one other question, and I'm sorry if I asked this before, just to be clear. Instead of the asphalt, can we put gravel down there instead of grass?
I think that's a question that would have to be dealt with through DPW to then
Okay.
maybe the same thing that you're widening the road and creating a different kind of space. But again, if you take the time another month to sort these things out, come up with some other alternatives, it may save you money in the long run and certainly potentially save you some aggravation if you get out ahead of what's allowable by the county, for sure.
I think you're going to find that if you need to do a public works agreement, you're going to get into a very expensive engineering process. It's not a complicated thing. It's just there's steps and drawings that need to be done that you wouldn't need if you had them, if you could do it in the front of your house. That's all. It would look better, and I think you will. When you get into it, you're going to say, "Oh my God, I didn't realize I had to do all of that."
So
Get into
From a
DPW.
landscaping perspective, there is probably nothing that would prevent you from regrading your yard and covering it with gravel instead of grass. So that's the other side of the coin.
yeah.
Can they go to DPW and ask have them come and look at the driveway space to see if there is something that's in the way? In other words, so they know what they're dealing with if they were to widen the driveway.
I had sent some images to them trying to get a question if this would count as a new curb cut, which is what I'm still waiting to hear back. And I got passed around to a bunch of people. So I followed up and haven't heard back. I'm still going to be a little bit annoyed about it, so I can confirm that.
Generally,
If it's not, then it they don't have to deal with that, but still waiting.
in my experience, if you're messing with roads, you need a public works agreement.
So commissioners, I think we're at the point where if we could get a motion to not approve this, with the understanding that we would like to take another look in October with a more complete plan.
I'll make a motion. I move that we do not approve as submitted, that we ask them to look at other alternatives, one of which might be a parking pad that was perpendicular to the driveway, more in front of the house, which might be a little more convenient for caregivers and others. So I think, and then come back to us and at the next meeting or in a subsequent meeting for review. And if you want to run it by staff, I think you could talk to staff about it before.
Thank you.
Caitlin, would you be the staff?
Do we have a second?
Yes. And we'll Jessica and I will send an email tomorrow with all the particulars and the other items that like the utility plan and site plan and then transitions and like other sort of details that they had mentioned that they would like to see as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
We
I mean, honestly, we love our neighborhood and want to keep the integrity of it, just like everybody else. That's why we moved, that's why we wanted to move here. So I appreciate your input. I appreciate your support and guidance, and hopefully we can come up with some kind of solution that is good for all.
But first, we need a second for the motion.
Second.
The motion.
Thank you, Phoebe. And roll call, please, Jessica.
Okay. Can we have Chris Weston, please?
I am voting yes to say that we need to see this again, correct?
Yes,
Correct.
that's what a yes vote is. Good, good. Thanks for that clarification, Chris.
Great. Phoebe, please.
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
Dan,
Yeah.
Ed,
Yes.
Tom. All right, Tom, are you unmuted?
Yes, no.
Great, thank you.
Yes, sorry.
Great, and John, please.
Yes. And again, Ms. Smith, thank you for being with us, and we'll look forward to chatting with you some more in the future. I'm sure we can get this resolved.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate your all's time and have a good night.
Great,
Thank you.
thank you, Mrs. Smith.
Okay, next up, Jessica.
Okay. Lastly, we have agenda item number 10, the Costa property at 16223 Corbett Village Lane in Moncton, County Council District number 3. This is a contributing resource within the Corbett County Historic District. And we are again reviewing the two-story accessory structure that's part of Code Enforcement Correction Notice CB 2300746. So just to refresh our memory, Historic Preservation staff was contacted on November 23rd of 2023 and informed of the construction of a two-story garage on the property without LPC review and without a building permit. Subsequently, a stop work order was issued by Code Enforcement on December 1st, 2023 with instructions to contact staff. The applicants came before the LPC at the March 14th meeting seeking an ex post facto review of the partially constructed two-story 26 by 48 foot garage with a height of 30 feet. And this was to be a 4-car garage with a gym and office space on the upper floors. We heard testimony from several neighbors in the community, and there was a mix of support and opposition. The major concerns at the time were the height, size, visibility, and compatibility to the historic district. The LPC denied the request, citing that the size and design of the structure did not meet our historic design guidelines. The applicants returned to the commission at its May 5th meeting with revised plans. The location of the overall footprint remained the same, but the following changes were made. The overall height was lowered from 30 feet to 21 feet and 11 inches. The front door elevation had 3 dormers, and as well as a dormer style inspired from the main house. The window sizes are smaller and more compatible with the main house. The style of windows changed from large picture windows to 2/2 sash windows to be more consistent with those on the main house. Additionally, they added 2 low-profile skylight windows on the rear roof slope to allow for more lighting, which helps to break up the solid wall in the previous designs. The entry door style has been changed to match the carriage-style garage doors, and the awning was modified to save more of a shed roof to help correspond with the roof style of existing porches on the main house. Again, we heard testimony from several neighbors in the community who still had major concerns over the height, size, visibility, and compatibility to the historic district. Again, the LPC voted to not approve the request and asked the applicants to return with a resubmission that addresses the concerns voiced at the meeting, particularly the size and height. The applicants have now returned with altered plans and a new design that addresses some of the concerns that were addressed at the March and May meetings. The current proposal includes the following. The location and footprint remain the same size at 26 by 48 feet, reducing the current height from 30 feet to 19 feet and 7 inches, making the structure 1.5 stories with a salt box roof. And just to note, the applicants are aware that a variance will be needed for a height greater than 15 feet. There will be parking for 2 cars and a fitness/recreation area on the first floor and storage space on the upper floor. The previous awning and balcony have been removed. There will be no windows on the east and rear elevations. The side elevations will have a single entry door and 2 windows in the attic story. There will be 3 evenly spaced gable dormers on the front roof elevation and 2 double carriage style garage doors. The roof will be covered with a standing seam metal and the walls will have vertical hardy board siding. The proposed window style is similar to those on the primary dwelling, 2/2 sash. Additionally, the applicant plans to plant more trees along the side yard to buffer any views to the structure. And some things for the commission to consider. The design and type of the village or overall village plan. This is a rural village. It was not a planned community or neighborhood with an organized street system. It is not the same category as Lutherville or Glendon County historic districts. All properties and primary dwelling sizes vary. There is a single road in and out. The main village area is at the entrance of Corbett Village Lane, where there is a higher concentration of structures in close proximity to the railroad. The property's size and location within the entire historic district and its overall visibility. The property is just over 1 acre and is located in the northwest quadrant of the district, along the northernmost district boundary line. The property sits slightly higher than the rest of the district. The structure is appropriately located in the rear yard. Steep slopes in the northwest side of the rear yard prevent any alternative locations. The structure is situated well behind the primary dwelling along the side property line with setbacks, varying from 1.6 feet to 2.6. The applicants are aware that a variance is needed for the setbacks and height. They are working through one review process at a time. The property is not visible from Corbett Road, and a majority of the property is within the district boundaries. The property is visible only by its immediate neighbors. The applicant submitted various aerial images of the property from Corbett Village Lane toward the house to show the structure's visibility. The current two-story structure is somewhat visible from those images. Staff feels that with the lower proposed roof height and additional tree plantings, the visual impact of the accessory structure will be greatly diminished from the rest of the district. Our guidelines mention that new accessory structures should be sited in rear yards and, generally, depending on the size of the property, an accessory structure's size should be compatible with and have a smaller footprint than the primary dwelling. The LPC reviews every proposal on a case-by-case basis because no one project or property is the same, and the LPC has approved larger accessory structures in the past where it was appropriate located, designed, minimally visible, and located on a larger size property. Staff included the plans from the most recent one for their reference. As with additions, an appropriately designed accessory structure should be visually subordinate to the primary building, and the historic character of the principal structure must be preserved by being the most important structure on the property. The LPC may consider larger footprints if they feel like it is 1, appropriate located, 2, the size of the property in comparison to the size of the structure, 3, it's appropriately designed, meaning the design doesn't overpower the historic structure, and 4, has a minimal visual impact. Staff feels that the applicant has sufficiently addressed the concerns of their community and the LPC to the best that they can, while still trying to achieve something that will satisfy their family's needs. Staff feels that with the lower proposed roof height and additional tree plantings, the visual impact of the accessory structure will be greatly diminished from the rest of the district. Staff also notes that if the structure were to be removed in the future, it would not have an impact on the historic district. Staff would also like to note that every property within Corbett Village is different, and any future large accessory structure request would be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. It is not a one-size-fits-all. Staff asked the Commission to consider the changes and information staff noted in the report and to determine if they better align with our guidelines. So the following recommendations are made to determine if the proposal is appropriately located, is appropriately designed, is a suitable size, considering the size of the entire property, has a minimal visual impact of the historic district, and then approve, deny, or modify accordingly, citing Baltimore County Historic Design Guides, new construction, addition, and non-contributing structures, County Code Section 32-7-405.
Thank you, Jessica. And I understand we have some visitors online who would like to speak to the issue. And
sorry. Yes, we do have some members of the public, but I just wanted to mention the written testimony that was submitted in advance. These are all shared to the Commission prior to the meeting, so they've had time to read them. But I'm just going to briefly mention them here. I'm not going to take the time to read all of them because there was a lot. So we did have a few in support of the project, neighbors in the community, and then we had several in opposition. Many of the opposition letters noted similar issues, and a lot of them have dealt with the size, height, allowing illegal construction, various issues with setbacks, those sort of things were a common mention in many of the letters.
So, folks, if you're going to speak to the issue, kind of the rules of the chase are to please remember you have a 3-minute limit. Please try not to repeat what others have said if you have some new information. And also, Jessica on staff has outlined the points that are important points for us to consider. So other neighborhood concerns outside of these parameters are not within our purview and do not add anything to the conversation. With that, do we want to start with some of those comments, Caitlin? Allowing people to speak on the phone.
Yeah, so first we have Mr. Andrew Clemens, and Mr. Clemens, I can unmute you, and you're free to address the commission whenever you're ready.
Okay, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to testify. This is our third meeting concerning this Costa property. At the 2 previous meetings, both Landmarks Commission people and neighbors have noted that the building is too tall, is much too large for the site, and since this building is almost 50% larger than the footprint of the house, it's far too big for an auxiliary structure. In fact, at the last meeting, one of the Landmarks Commission members said directly, bring back plans for a 2-car garage. And yet the current plan does nothing to reduce the size of this building. Now, it was my understanding that the Landmarks Commission and the homeowners were supposed to be working together to get to an acceptable result. And it seems to me that the Costas have no interest in making any substantive changes to the size of this building. The size hasn't changed not 1/4 of an inch after the Landmarks Commission has said twice that it's too big. In addition to this building being way too big, I have other concerns. The garage doors on the exercise part of the building are unnecessary. If the Costas wanted light and air, they could put windows in the south facade of the building. But the 2 garage doors do make it possible for this to turn back into a 4-car garage anytime they want. The dormers are unnecessary on the building, as well as the height of the crawl space. All that means is, with the dormers and the roof line being that high, that could become a finished 2nd story at some time in the future. I think we need to keep in mind that the Costas illegally built this building without any permission, any permits, and any guidance from the Landmarks Commission. And we need to reject this plan in fairness to all to keep us from having this huge eyesore in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clemens. I appreciate it. Who's next up?
Next, we have Ms. Christina Altman. Ms. Altman, I see that Mr. Jeremy Altman is online, so I'm gonna unmute and let me know if you're able to speak.
Yes, I'm here.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Dear committee members, I have lived on Corbett Village Lane for over 30 years. You have hopefully seen my compilation of photos showing all of the historic Corbett's accessory buildings. The committee has also hopefully seen the 11 very thoughtful letters of objection representing 17 members of our community. That is an incredible and laudable achievement of neighborhood action from our very small village community. Hopefully you have also read the recent letter of objection from the Baltimore County Historic Trust. The Costas have now lowered the height from 30 to almost 20 feet, but even if one visualizes my photo rendering of somewhat lower structure than the current frame, it is clear how disproportionately massive it still would be compared to the other accessory buildings of the village, almost all of which are small sheds. It's about the same height, but more massive than 3 out of 4 largest accessory buildings within the historic area. And quoting the previous LPC meeting, they are agricultural and meant for storage use, and they have history which brought them originally there. The Costa proposal's footprint is clearly still much too large. As the concrete foundation was poured illegally without any permit whatsoever, the LPC should not feel obligated to approve the structure just because the foundation is there. Moreover, the design of the new Costa proposal is unfitting to the agricultural nature of the village. The Baltimore County Historic Preservation Design Guideline Book states that LPC approves new construction proposals that follow the principles of Chapter 6 to design new buildings which visually relate to the historical environment by respecting the design patterns of the surrounding area. The Costa design of a chain of 4 large garage doors side by side gives an extremely urban appearance as if it would belong to a big inner city row house. It clearly disrespects our historic environment. As the webpage of Maryland's Historic Trust states, the Corbett Historic District retains its turn of the 20th century character with few insensitive alterations and little recent construction. It would be extremely unfortunate if this committee would leave a big insensitive building as a permanent monument of this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Altman. We appreciate it. And next up, Jessica.
Great. Next we have Mr. Don Yocum. Let me pull you up, Mr. Yocum. I do see we have a call-in user. I don't believe that is Mr. Yocum. Yeah, Mr. Yocum did note that there was a possibility he would not be able to speak tonight.
Join us. Okay.
So, yeah, if he is able to sign on in the next few minutes, we'll come back to him. But in the meantime, we do have Mr. John McFarland who will speak. So let's see. Miss Barbara McFarland, I have you unmuted. If you or your husband would like to speak first.
Yes, this is John McFarland. You have my written comments on the current design, which I think is completely inappropriate. But this evening, I would like to address the accusation that some neighbors are not voicing support for this garage because how they might be treated by people who oppose it. I don't know what they're telling the Costas, but I do know that I'm not threatening anybody and that I have seen no evidence that anything like this is happening. I'm only concerned about this accusation, because it's being used to influence the committee and has become part of official county documents. Also, I would like to explain why I let the construction get as far along as it did without notifying the county. For me, having been a contractor with a home improvement license, it was beyond the realm of possibility that someone would build this garage, this building, where they did without any permit. But they did. But this does not mean that we are stuck with this footprint. A small crew with the right equipment could shorten the foundation in a day. And also, I would like to comment that the building is visible from the bike and hike trail in the 9 months out of the year, and it's visible from Corbett Village Lane. I mean, it's certainly not visible from Corbett Road. I don't know why that would even be a reason. But it's just seems pretty frustrating that it seems like they're getting getting by with just these minor changes, but that do not come anywhere close to meeting the requirements of the commission. And I hope that they reject this and we can start with a new footprint. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McFarlane. And then I saw that Mr. Yochum has joined us. Jessica.
Yeah, I'm not seeing Mr. Yoakum show up on the attendees list. But Miss Costa did message saying that he was on the call. I'll just wait for her response. But in the meantime, perhaps Miss McFarlane, Miss Barbara McFarlane, can provide her testimony.
Okay.
Okay. My name is Barbara McFarlane, and I've lived in Corbett Village for over 40 years, and I live next door to the Costa. Once again, I'm here to testify regarding the inappropriateness of the Costa's accessory structure. As you recall, construction of the garage complex began last October with no permits of any kind. It was only halted when neighbors became concerned about its location, height, and size and contacted the county. Despite 2 LPC meetings, which recommended that the building conform to county regulations and historic district guidelines, the frame of the building still looms over the village, and the newest plans still defy established historic and county regulations. It is true that the Costas have made additional modifications to their plans, but these changes are still grossly inadequate. The new building's footprint still appears to be greater than the footprint of their home, and the height is still above the allowed maximum of 15 feet. I urge you, as members of the Landmarks Preservation Commission, to disregard the fact that part of the structure has been erected and instead consider what decision you would have made regarding these newest plans if they were the original submission and nothing had yet been erected. Do these plans enhance or detract from the historic character of the village? Do they conform to the guidelines established to protect and preserve communities such as historic Corbett? Or will they result in the erosion of such standards for future projects within the community? The future of historic Corbett Village is in your hands. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McFarlane. And
All right. Yeah, so it looks like Mr. Yoakum is not able to connect to the audio. Let's see. Mr. Yoakum, I have you unmuted.
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
perfect.
you got me. Okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah, I didn't mention anything about not being here, but anyway, that was me on the phone earlier. All right. Hey, well, thank you for letting me speak. And, I want to support this proposed 2-car garage and fitness space for the Costa family. I'm a resident of the neighborhood. And in addition to my home, I got 2 auxiliary structures on my property, a large barn and a 2-story guest house. And I'm here to give some perspective and support of this project. Firstly, I want to commend the Costa family for their transparency throughout this process. They've been open and communicative with the neighborhood, which is greatly appreciated by me. Our community is known for its historic charm with many homes, all the various types of auxiliary structures, and significant additions. While Corbett Village may not currently have any garages, there are several within our historic district, including one visible from my house and another from the road. So the presence of these garages so that they are not out of place in the neighborhood. The Costa's proposed garage and fitness space, I don't think it'll not only enhance their property, as many of us has done over the years, but it'll also contribute positively to their family. So again, like many of us here have done with our properties over the year, it's important to remember that just because Corbett Village Lane doesn't have a garage doesn't mean it shouldn't. If we were strictly to adhere to that logic, we might also have to prohibit other modern amenities that add value and enjoyment to homes, such as swimming pools, which we have a few on Corbett Village Lane. Ironically, 2 of the 3 owners of swimming pools are the residents that both spoke against this project in the last meeting. So I don't get that. Moreover, I have spent time with the family talking about the changes that they're proposing. The space is clearly not intended for living purposes, as suggested by the opposition. It's designed for practical use, storage, and fitness, and that aligns with how many of us use our own auxiliary structures. In fact, I use my barn as both a fitness space and storage, and another neighbor in our street has adapted their barn as an office, gym, and studio. Contrary to some claims, barns in our neighborhood are not solely used as traditional barns, but have been adapted for various purposes that enhance our daily lives. So unfortunately, it seems that the personal disagreements have overshadowed the focus on historic guidelines. I urge the LPC to look beyond these personal contentions and consider the revisions made to the design in response to the previous LPC recommendations. The Costa family has worked diligently to address concerns and comply with historic guidelines. In conclusion, I strongly support the approval of this project. The Costa's two-car garage and fitness space will be a valuable addition to our neighborhood, maintaining a historic character while meeting modern needs. So I thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Mr. Yocum. We appreciate your comments. Jessica, anybody else we have?
That concludes our registered speakers. We do have property owners on with us if I'm sure they would like to address the commission. Miss Gina Costa, I have you unmuted if you'd like to say anything and then respond to the commission's questions, if any.
Hi, yes, thank you, Jessica. Actually, my husband Nate is going to speak on our family's behalf, and then we also have our consultant and property manager, Bruce, that has registered and planned ahead to speak on our behalf. Thank you so much.
Sure, I have, I can have Mr. Jokes unmuted just to add anything to the questions then. Great, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Bruce Stokes. I'm a Maryland property line surveyor.
We can't hear you, I don't think.
Can you hear me now?
I can't too much.
Yes, thank you very much. So what I was saying is my name is Bruce Stokes. I'm a Maryland property line surveyor, and I have been practicing surveying and doing most of the zoning work in northern Baltimore County for 38 years. So I'm here only to address the portion of the process that would be through the zoning and it's the zoning hearing to address the proposed garage. I also testify in court cases concerning the zoning regs, so I'm very, very familiar with them. In 38 years, I have submitted hundreds and hundreds of zoning variances similar to those that are needed here. Most are for accessory structures, garages, pool houses, anything that is not the principal structure of the house. And quite a few of them, or most of them, may even be for the height and for the setbacks. So for this project, we would have 3 requests, petition requests to zoning. The first would be a special hearing.
Could I interrupt just for a second? We are not a body that reviews for zoning. So any comments about zoning are interesting, but they're not something that we have any purview over.
Okay, Mr. Hort, I have sat through all of the meetings that you've had concerning this, and in each of the meetings, it has come up as to what zoning would require, what the process would be. All I'm trying to do is clarify and say how easy and the likelihood of getting this would be.
Yes, Mr. Shook, that was in the form of friendly advice from the commissioners and not actually part of our decision-making or hearing because it is outside of our purview. So we'll rely on your word that you think it could go through zoning, but we'll continue if there are things you want to add to the discussion that relate strictly to landmarks preservations. charge. We'd be happy to hear those.
Okay, thank you. Then let me leave you with one thing, that it would be my recommendation that the committee allow this at this time to go for the zoning variances, file for the petition, go for the zoning variances, and then address that at this time with the proposal they have. That would be my recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And do the owners want to speak? Ms. Costa?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Caitlin and Jessica, for all your guidance through this process. It has been quite a learning experience, to say the least. We are very grateful to be here tonight to present our revised drawings for our project. During our last meeting, we were provided with some valuable and direct feedback from this committee. We went back and watched the recording of this meeting numerous times, and excuse me, and again with our architect to make sure we captured all the details shared. After much discussion and renovations, we created the plans presented here tonight. As it was stated, our structure is now 1.5 stories, a 2-car garage, a fitness space, and storage above. As I mentioned in my first letter, I have a small wellness company. We have a few facilities here in Baltimore that all support our mission, which is to positively impact lives. I have devoted my life to helping others through health and fitness. I have an exercise science degree from University of Maryland. I've been in business now for over 18 years. Fitness is not just a business for me, it is a way of life. It has always been a way for our family to bond and spend quality time together, and also teach our children the importance of being healthy. Because of where we live, we have easy access to do many things that support our healthy lifestyle. We use the river to float and kayak, the NCR trail for biking and walks. We even use Corbett Village Lane to do our hill sprints or walks. It's a very steep hill. Having a fitness space in our structure will allow us to do something we have never had, a space to do weight training and stretching and resistance at our house and do it together. This is why this space is so important to my wife, our 3 boys, and me. It's not just a place to park cars. Now, I want to address the changes that we've made since our last meeting based on the feedback provided. We have made it 1.5 stories. We've removed everything from the top floor, including the office, bathroom, and exercise space. The entire top floor will now be used for storage, which will be very helpful for us as our house is very limited. We lowered it from 30 feet down to 19 feet. And I want to note that the top floor will only be 6 feet tall at the highest point and will slope down to literally a foot at the edges, as you can see in our drawings. I'd also like to point out that there's a beam that runs across the top that is almost 3 feet tall. This is to make the roof very structurally sound, but also allows for the slope of the roof to be similar to our house as the new roof line runs past the ceiling of the floor below. To be very clear, we have no intentions of using this as a living space, as it was suggested by our neighbors in the previous meeting. We also removed the decks on the side. We made it a 2-car garage. We moved the fitness space from above to replace the other 2-car bays, but we kept the garage doors to allow the fitness space to have a lot of light, air, and feel open. Plus, we feel the garage doors we selected are designed to blend in and look like swinging doors and less like garage doors. I hope these efforts show our willingness to correct the mistakes we have made. We are not perfect, but we are very good people and want to right our wrongs. We are hopeful and confident we will be able to get the variances approved, as Bruce spoke briefly on there before. But as it was discussed in the last meeting, and Caitlin and Jessica mentioned again, last meeting they showed that structure that was approved recently that was over 20 feet tall. Now, we understand that there's been mixed feelings amongst our neighbors about this project. While some are supportive, others have expressed concerns, and we truly wish to avoid further escalation here tonight. We feel we have been committed to learning the historic guidelines as our revisions here show. Your guidance is invaluable in helping us ensure our project enhances rather than detracts from the historic character of our community. I ask that you look at this project closely through the lens of how you feel this supports or challenges the historic guidelines, and that you take into consideration how unique and diverse our historic neighborhood is, as it is filled with short, tall, big, and small houses and other structures and everything in between. That is what makes this place special, and we feel our project now aligns with the standards, guidelines, and spirit of the LPC in our area. Thank you for your time, consideration, and all that you do to preserve the charm in our historic neighborhood. We look forward to hearing your feedback tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate those remarks. Commissioners, we have all the information in front of us. Open the floor to discussion on it.
Can we ask some questions of the owner?
Absolutely.
Okay. So a few questions regarding this particular design. Did you explore options to be able to get it under, into the 15-foot height? And were there any considerations that prevented that? Or
Yes, so as I mentioned, the beam that runs across the top to hold the roof line is about a 3-foot beam, and it is something that we can go down and explore that if we can make that shorter, but I think that will also change the roof pitch.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're trying to mimic the pitch of the current house as recommended in our last meeting. So I'm sure we could make that beam shorter or smaller to make the overall structure shorter.
One of the other things in terms of the height, was there any consideration of lowering the roof height on the first story of the garage? Is there particular need for it to be the 10-foot height?
I mean, honestly, the way that we plan to use that space, a lower height now for the fitness side, or to be able to put all of our accessories in there. But I want to just say that we are open to all of your suggestions, and like our goal is for a resolution. But it is something that we did explore, and ideally it would be 10 feet tall.
And then my last question relates to the dormer windows. If you could speak to why you chose dormer windows in there. They seem to be more of a residential kind of window rather than an accessory building window.
So in our first submission, we tried to make it look more like a barn and didn't have dormers, and then it was recommended by the committee to put dormers on to make it look more like our house, and so that's why we put dormers on it. So again, we're open to suggestions to get this to a resolution, and we want it to feel that you all, the committee, believes that it supports, the guidelines. So you say change the roof to no dormers or one dormer like our house has, or we are all ears.
Thank you. Any other questions? Any thoughts? Other thoughts, commissioners?
I have a question. Did you explore reducing the footprint of the building to have it more in keeping with the size of your current existing house?
I was really trying to express the importance of us having a fitness space. And for us to have that space, there's that 2-car garage. In order for, 5 of us and, kind of the equipment that we would want to put in there, that is the reason why we wanted to keep the footprint the same size. And I also mentioned, I think last time, is that, if it's a, footprint of our house, like numerous homes in our, district have done, you know, if that's our next step of expanding the footprint of our house, then, you know, we're going to be, you know, back to this committee to share our drawings for a, you know, addition onto our house. Because again, you know, we have 3 boys that have lived in their 1 bedroom their entire lives. We have 2 bedrooms in our house. So this space is what we feel was the solution to be able to expand into the things that we want to do together, that it would add value to our family. You know, and we have a 17-year-old, a 15-year-old, and an 11-year-old. These aren't babies. So, and that room is not that big, but it has 2 bunk beds and another bed with pulls out on the bottom. And they don't complain, that's for sure. But they would love more space.
Anything else, commissioners?
Yeah, I had something. Hopefully my mic's a little bit better. I adjusted it here. I think the 2 main things that were brought up are, you know, it's that height not being the 15 foot and the footprint of the whole property that we're all considering. I mean, as far as, you know, a lot of our guidance, we're not considering necessarily the use of the property. We're not considering a lot of different things, you know, the permit aspect of, you know, everything else. Unfortunately, you know, just if we take that, you know, fully given information, it seems like a variance, you know, according by your own person submission might be granted. So, you know, it's kind of not taken back where if we're sticking with this 15-foot height and then we're told that, hey, this is going to easily pass, it's, you know, you might want to just kind of consider the information, you know, that you're giving us for the future. However, I think those are the 2 things, and if there's any additional information dealing with that height of the roof and the footprint overall, I think those are the 2 key things that we're really reviewing today.
And I think the footprint should reduce. I think it needs to be, if you look at, again, I'll say what I said in the last meeting, if you squint your eyes and look at it, it's so much, the addition is the new building, this building is so much larger than the footprint of the existing building. I don't think we would have approved it if you brought it. We would say the same thing. I think you should reduce the size of it. It's not in keeping with the guidelines. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's our job.
And I agree with Ed. No matter how it's changed with dormers, without, with this, with that, it's just too big for that property, for that village. And I am very surprised, knowing many people who have lived in that village in the past and present, that this couple would start building without, you know, getting proper permits in the very beginning. And had they applied for those, we wouldn't be here, because I don't, you know, I think things would have been caught much earlier and it would not be this size. It just needs to be smaller to fit the guidelines of this historic village. It's a unique place. It's a shame that, you know, neighbors are against neighbors, because from what I understand, I do not know the Costas, but I understand they're very, very good neighbors and people. And it just seems like they're good people that have a bad plan that doesn't fit where they want to live. And their boys are now teenagers. They have lived in this small house for the bulk of their lives. And now all at once, they've got to have this fitness space and everything else. Most of us that want a fitness space go to a gym, or in Mr. Costa's place, they could go to see him for a plan and all that. I mean, it's something that probably all of us would like, but we know that can't be on our properties. And I feel the same way about this. It's very nice to have that and for family, but there has to be another alternative, because this does not fit where they live.
And so as we consider it, keep in mind our guidelines, the use that they put the space to is not particularly our concern. but more the size and the appearance of the building. Any other thoughts on those particular items?
Can I just add that, there's multiple structures that are over 15 feet tall in our neighborhood in the historic district. So I understand that when you say the size, but it isn't. It would not be the only thing in our neighborhood that is of that size.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Of course, we may or may not have seen those things. They may not have come under our review. They may be structures that came into being before the historic district. So we can't really speak to any of those particular issues. But I understand the concern.
I have one. To me, the 15 feet, 14 feet, 18 feet is not an issue to me. It's more the size of the footprint is the thing that bothers me. I think that they've lowered the height. The 15 foot is really a zoning issue, not a guidelines issue, in my view.
I again agree with Ed. It's not so much just the height, it's the mass of the building for the lot and compared to the original dwelling. It just does not fit in this
A
place.
potential solution might be for us to do a committee to examine the site and take a look at it, get a closer look, see how the visual impact is, see what it looks like from the property, see what it looks like from the street, as we've done in other cases. Is that something that commissioners might feel like?
That makes sense.
I think it's a good suggestion.
Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
So Ed, I have a question for you. In looking again and sort of looking online at the site, it appears that the site that's most publicly visible, though, is going to be the side of the structure, not the front of the structure. So in that case, how much does the width matter?
I'm not talking about the width. It's the length of the building. It's a long building.
Right,
It's just much larger.
But
the width of the building is similar to the width of the house. That
Yeah.
doesn't bother me as much as if we can reduce the length of the building by, I don't know, enough to have it feel like it's in proportion to the house, the existing house would be what I would.
Right, I think
The
Scott's
question
point
is,
is
if the length isn't really visible to anyone, why is that as
Right.
much of a consideration?
Yeah, I think Scott's point is that as you look at the house and the adjunct building, they don't look out of proportion because you don't see the long view of it. Am I capturing that right, Scott? So if the commission thinks that a small technical committee might be of value, that might be a way to try and solve this problem and get over it. We're having some difference of opinion, and rather than come up with a sharply divided opinion, it may be best to take a look. Do I have some volunteers?
I'll volunteer. I'm very familiar with the village.
Yeah, I'll volunteer. I'll go.
Anyone else? We would have 3 or 4.
I'll volunteer, John.
Who's that?
Chris Weston.
Oh, Chris Weston. Thanks, Chris. I'm sorry.
How's he?
Sorry, I'm in the car actually.
Oh,
okay.
Not driving. Not driving.
Good. Good. Anybody else want to jump in on that?
Fuck.
All depends on the day. So just add me in the chain in there, because if I'm available end of the day.
Good. Good. Well, we will try to do that, and I'd also be interested. So that gets 5 of us out there. That would be a good group to look at it. So what we'd be looking for now that we have volunteers, a little backward, but looking for a motion to approve a technical committee to report back to the commission at the October meeting. Could I get a motion to that effect?
So moved.
And a second?
Second,
Thank you, Wendy. And then a roll call vote, Jessica?
All right, can we have Chris Weston, please?
Yes.
Phoebe, sorry, Phoebe, are you unmuted?
Oh, she's muted.
Um,
There we go.
yes.
Great, thank you. Scott, please.
Yes.
Wendy,
yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Tom, please,
Yes.
and John.
Yes. And to the neighbors and to the owners of the property.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry to interrupt, John. I don't know that we have a motion on the proposal. Was it to clarify? Was it to form the technical committee and to reject the project as proposed and to return to the commission, or we just missed the wording on that a little bit?
I rely on you and Kate, and if we need to reject and combine them and reject the proposal.
You would still need to reject this proposal because you can't table it for the next one because it'll have to come in be an alternate design.
So Ed, would you be willing that your motion be amended to reflect?
You can make two. It can be two separate motions.
I think we could just amend it to reject it and come back and do a technical committee to come and discuss it next meeting.
Thank you. And I think Wendy, you would second
Yes.
it as you're okay
I would
with that?
agree to that.
And so Jessica, we should probably do another roll call vote though.
All right.
So let's just make it for the record that we are removing that first.
The motion is that we are rejecting the current proposal and appointing a technical subcommittee to preview the property before the next meeting.
All right, and I apologize for the redundancy. Could I have Chris Weston's vote again?
Yes.
Phoebe,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
and John, please.
Yes, and no need to apologize, Jessica. Thank you so much for keeping us in good order. That's important to do. And to our guests who are with us tonight to speak to this property on both sides of it, thank you so much for your time and investment. We value your comments, we value your interests, and we will try to come to a resolution. Thank you. I think the next thing we have on the agenda is just the review of applications and tax credits that were approved.
Yeah, we did have quite a few tax credit applications come in with MHD approval over the last 2 months. The first is the Fisher property at 212 Hopkins Road in Towson. It's a contributing resource within Rogers Forge National Register Historic District. And they received Part 2 approval for a new HVAC system, in-kind gutter, and downspout installations. Next, we have the Scott property at 315 Central Avenue in Glendon. This is a contributing resource within the Glendon County Historic District, and the applicants received Part 2 approval for the refinishing of the original pine flooring. Next, we have the Watkins Patoka property at 709 Clifton Road, Subbrook Park. This is a contributing resource within the Subbrook Park County Historic District, and they received a Part 2 emergency approval for in-kind repairs and replacements to their sewer waste line. Then we have the Joyce property at 518 Murdoch Road in Towson. This is a contributing resource within the Ansley National Register Historic District, They received Part 2 approval for in-kind roof and gutter replacements. Next, we had the Morgan property at 637 Murdoch Road in Towson. This was a contributing resource in the Ainsley National Register Historic District, and they received approval for repairs to the main house sewer system. Next, we have the McClung property at 1604 South Rolling Road in Relay, a contributing resource within the Relay County Historic District, and they received Part 2 approval for vinyl window replacements. And then finally, we have the Stuber property at 901 Old Oak Road in Towson. This is a contributing resource within the Stoneleigh County Historic District, and they received Part 2 approval for exterior painting and siding repairs to the main house and garage, as well as slate roof repairs, window repairs, and canvas awning replacement, as well as hardwood flooring refinishing, interior painting, and bathroom and basement repairs, and an HVAC replacement. And that's it.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you. So, important to note, our next meeting is in October. So we're back on schedule here. Summer vacation is over, folks. October 10th and then November 14th. So note those dates for your meeting. And I think that all we're left with is a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Tom. A second?
Second.
Phoebe, thank you. Appreciate it. And raise your hand or say yay and we'll adjourn. Thank you. By acclamation, we are adjourning. Thank you so much, everybody. Appreciate it.
Great. Thank you, folks.